What up, guys? Today we're going to go over passive, active, and biamp. So let's do this. So when we're talking about this, we're generally talking about your front speakers. Doesn't mean you can't do all of them, but your front speakers are generally what we're going to be talking about. Most systems in cars are going to be a passive-active blend already, meaning passive fronts. Generally, coax speakers are passive anyway, and active to the sub. So in a passive system, we're going to have a tweeter, a mid, and a crossover. The passive crossover network using caps and coils is what makes it a passive system. What are the pros and cons to a passive system? The pros to the passive system is generally price-wise it's the most affordable, and it's also least likely to damage your speaker due to the preset crossover points that come in the passive crossover. So what is the disadvantage to running passive? Well, first one is time correction. Since you're running the mid and tweeter off of 2 channels, not 4, you can only time align to 1 location. Generally, I select the mid location, but it is a disadvantage because that means the tweeters are not going to meet your ears at the proper time. Another disadvantage is passive crossover networks use power. So your speakers aren't getting all the power they can get from that amplifier. So now let's talk about running it active. If you're doing an active system, obviously we're not going to use the passive crossover network. Those are gone. We're going to need 4 channels to run the front stage all by itself. There are 3 ways to do active. First one's through a radio like a Pioneer. Some Pioneers have the ability to do network mode, which is active essentially. Disadvantage to the Pioneer radio though is you won't have rear speakers. Another option is through an amplifier. Many amplifiers from Alpine, Kenwood, and JL all have the ability to do active just for the amplifier alone. And my favorite way is through a digital signal processor. Plus it's going to give the ability to time correct each and every speaker so they're meeting your ear at exactly the same time. So what is the disadvantage to going active? First one is, if you don't know how to set the crossover properly, you risk a big chance of damaging your speakers. The other disadvantage, of course, is price. If you want to go active, you're going to need a few more parts. You're going to either need an amp that'll do it or a digital signal processor. So now let's talk about biamp. When going biamp, it's going to be a blend of both passive and active. You're going to use a passive crossover network that has multiple inputs, so you can run 4 channels to your front stage. Once you're going to do this properly, you're going to need a few more parts. Obviously, you're going to need an amplifier that's going to have more channels output, and to get the time correction advantage, you'll also need a processor. The advantage to going biamp over active are the crossovers are predetermined by the manufacturer in the passive crossover network. The disadvantage versus active is, of course, that passive crossover network is going to take some power. So your speakers don't get all the power that amp has to provide. One thing you have to consider when going biamp is you have to make sure you buy a pair of components that has biamp capability. Many speakers don't. Like if you look at the Hertz line of speakers, great product. To my knowledge, none of their component sets are biampable. Focals are biampable. JL C5s and down, not biampable. Biamp is probably the best safe way to go, so you don't have to concern yourself about the crossover points, but you still have the ability to do the time alignment separately. So the biggest downfall to biamp is obviously price. You're going to have to get the right set of components, best to do it with a processor, and at least 4 channels for your front stage. Alright guys, so that's a quick overview of passive, active, and biamp. And as always, have a great day.